Thanks, Ashish. So we'll be waiting for a minute and so before, and what we have seen that most of the participant joins within next 4 or 5 minutes as numbers are increasing. So yes, let me start the webinar by saying welcome, uh, welcome to you all in this in our webinar on procurement. We have been actually conducting this webinar for quite some time. This is our fourth edition, and the way we have planned to organize and plan to take this. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the way we have planned is we'll be having discussion for first, say, probably 30-35 minutes. After that, we'll be taking the questions. So for the audience, if you have any question, please do feel free to post your questions in the chat box. We'll take it up after the discussion is over. So what we have seen in the last more than a year, many eminent speakers have enlightened us on various topics on procurement. But today our topic is unlocking value, procurement governance and efficiency in the hybrid workplace environment. So we will try to learn from our eminent panelists how the governance is happening, what are the challenges they are facing, what are the challenges they used to face before the work from anywhere came into picture. Now there are different kind of challenges, how they are mitigating the challenges or addressing those challenges. Those are the things we will try to learn from our speakers. Today, we have with us three eminent speakers who will share their view on the same topic. Let me introduce our speakers. First is Mr. Manish Singhania. He is a head finance, Arsenal Mittal Nippon Steel. Mr. Singhania is a finance professional having more than 20 years of experience. Apart from exposure in core finance function, he has done contract management in international contracts, turnkey contracts, led advisory and consulting role, managed greenfield project in large manufacturing setup in metal, power, textile. Thank you, Mr. Singhania, for joining us. Our second speaker is Mr. Ajitav Sood, Assistant Executive Director, Commercial, Dalmia Cement Bharat Limited. Mr. Sood is an indirect procurement expert. He is also in strategic sourcing, e-procurement specialist with nearly 30 years of cross-functional experience in MNCs, procurement, supply chain consultancy, process industries, and BPO domain. Thank you, Mr. Sood, for joining us.
Thank you, Partha. Thanks.
Yeah. And our third speaker is Mr. Karan Bhatia, Vice President and Head Procurement and Facilities, Bharti AXA Life Insurance. Mr. Bhatia is a successful purchasing professional with more than 15 years of experience. He is heading operations, strategic procurement, strategic planning, implementation of procurement policy processes, contract management. Thank you, Mr. Bhatia, for joining us.
Thank you, Partha.
So, if I talk about today's topic, it is the governance. The governance is a process of decision making. It's all about the process, how well we manage our resources, company's money. What we try to achieve through a good governance in procurement is transparency, cost effectiveness, and efficiency. There might be more, but these are the three important areas which everybody talks about. Procurement is not a simple transactional job. Procurement department is a strategic function now. Their activity actually directly affects the EBITDA of the company. But what we have seen is the strong governance is a key aspect of the procurement in order to achieve organizational objectives. Too much governance creates burden and makes the process inefficient. No governance results in inconsistencies. There has to be a fine balance between the responsible governance and creating a burden. So our discussion will roam around this topic. But pandemic and working from home or remotely has suddenly created a challenge for us. We would like to hear from our eminent panelists how the governance is done, what are the challenges faced by them, and how they addresses those challenges. So to start the discussion, I would like to come to Mr. Sood first. Mr. Sood, my first question is, how vital is governance to a procurement department? What are the major area in the procurement chain that needs strong governance?
Well, thanks for having me, Partha. I think it's a very pertinent question that you asked. And I think as far as governance structure is concerned and as far as different control systems are concerned, I think procurement and finance is a function where I think it is of paramount importance. If you really look at procurement as a function today, I think in various organizations and corporates today, we have various ERP systems in place. And I think we all have instituted various governance mechanisms, various control mechanisms within the organizations, within procurement. And I think that is very much important for us, for various reasons. I mean, in today's world, I think it's very important for us to have these control mechanisms in place, not only to manage our inventory, not only to have proper, control over the wastage that we have, not only to have, avoid any kind of invoicing, mismanagement, etc. So all of these things have, in order to avoid all of these things, we need to have these control mechanisms and governance in place. Looking at the procurement function per se, I think if you really look at the procurement function from a P2P perspective, from procure to pay, I think in today's world, I think we need to have these control mechanisms, at every stage. More so because I think as we are dealing into large corporates, there are various functions organized by various different departments, and hence it becomes utmost important for us to give the authority and the approval authority to various teams and various members in different departments, so to say. So to start for in procurement, if you really look at it, right from getting a requisition in place, I mean, if I'm talking of a large corporate with various plants all across the country, just like ours, as far as Dalmia Cement is concerned. So we have 13 plants all across India. So it is very important for us to basically have these governance mechanisms in place, and especially talking about the procurement function, right from getting a requisition into our system, which has to be approved by the respective departmental head, to the purchase order being released. We have various control mechanisms within the system. Technology, yes, plays a very important role here, because the entire procurement function now, at least in our organization, is online. We are on SAP, and we are, of course, having other tools also in place to manage the entire P2P process. So right from getting a requisition in place, which is being approved, to sending the quotations to the approved suppliers only, to getting the quotations, to getting the approvals, for the award scenario. Everywhere, I think at every step we'll have to have governance, and these things have to be done by different people within the chain, within the hierarchy as such, because that is where the value comes in. We cannot have a single person creating the requisition and maybe creating an award scenario or creating a PO in one go. And I think that is something which needs to be, which without asking, I think everybody knows, is that something we'll have to take into place whenever a corporate procurement happens. Now, I come from a background of indirect procurement, where if you really ask me, I mean, there are various SKUs, which are there, and a number of SKUs are too large. In order to manage those SKUs, a lot of technology, the use of technology has to be there. If we really want to have a proper governance system, if we want to have a proper control system, I think it is very, very important. So overall, if you really look at it, cutting short, I think it's very important for all of us, to have proper control and governance mechanism into our procurement systems, to avoid any kind of wastage, any kind of inventory mismanagement, any kind of invoice mismanagement, etc. I think it is most important from all of us to have various control mechanisms in various stages in procurement, and invoicing and payments.
Thank you, Mr. Sood. So you have rightly pointed out few areas where the governance control is very, very important to control the wastage, invoicing management, and the importance of bringing all the stakeholders for decision making, approval by department heads, and especially the management of the large SKUs through our platform. So taking the cue from these points, Mr. Singhania, I'd like to come to you with my second question. So the area of governance, as mentioned by Mr. Sood, probably applies to you. There might be few more, few less, but more or less this is very common to everybody. So how do your procurement function adhering to those governance needs? How do you manage those governance?
Thank you, Mr. Chakravarti. So basically, as of course, Sab has already explained, so governance per se, I would say it's not an option number one. It's a part of the life, the way we manage the business. And I would say that historically, as we moved into the improved into economic development and our organization structures becomes corporatized. So it becomes necessary because there is a difference, this dimension between ownership and the management. So ultimately, governance has to be there. It is there. What we are using of course, we are also a multi-location large corporate. So governance is the part way of the life, the way business has to be conducted. And over the period, how we have done is the governance that we have continued to extend of manual controls and personalized controls. Three thing aspects which our organization in the journey for efficiency improvement. First is uniform policies across all organization. Second one is proper documentation. So whatever policies that is communicated to everybody, it is documented. So there is no gap between understanding and implementation. That is most important. And third is moving into system-based controls. So instead of doing the personalized control, which always are prone to the message, may not be intentionally, but because of the procedural issues, there was always chances yes, personalized controls may be missed. So we are moving towards the systematic system controls. And in the system controls, and then because either through the ERP systems and now with the digitization which is taking place. So then the focus is that yes, you bring the processes more automated, where the automatic controls are there, and this is the way things will be running. So then any exception, if it is there, that requires approval, that approval metrics should be well known and inbuilt into the system. So idea is that business and controls both should work into harmony. Second one is yes, whatever based on the business dynamics needs, these controls has to be dynamic and accordingly need to be reviewed. We review them on case-to-case basis, on periodical basis, because as the business evolves, your rules and regulations and the way how you conduct the business, then accordingly that need to be evolved and revised also. So these are the basic controls on which we are functioning.
Yeah, thank you. But you have mentioned the system controls. But can you give us a few examples of the system controls, the maybe top 5 system controls which you have implemented, or it's very, very important for your function?
So because I will just give example for procurement related controls only. In any organization, whenever any procurement proposal is there is always authority metrics, and proposal need to be moved from one person, one officer to other officials into this chain, and need to be signed, approved. Normally, of course, pre-pandemic, it used to be normally it is on I would say manual files used to be moved or into through the mails. But the challenges which you used to start facing is that with that much of mails exchanges, you lose the thread of the mails or communications. So what we have done we have brought up that yes, of course, workflow management into the SAP or ERP system for the release strategy, number one. And secondly, we have developed a platform where starting from the inquiry to the customer, inquiry to the prospective vendors, and then all communications, everything should be are into that dashboard. and then when a portal, and then whenever the respective official, whenever he is taking the approval or giving approval or taking the decision, all relevant material remains into that, and then entire chain remains into that portal itself. So at a later stage, from the audit point of view also, documentation perspective also, or in the future when you want to reprocure that particular material, so then entire trail remains into one dashboard, one portal. So this is the type of things which we have developed recently.
Okay, okay. Thanks. In fact, there's a very few very important points you have mentioned, that the uniform policy and proper documentation of the process, which actually help us to maybe in the digitization also it helps a lot, but at least to have a control and systematic control on the entire process. But I would like to harp on this policy, the process, and I would like to take this question to Mr. Bhatia. What happens is sometimes very strong governance. I mean, you can define a policy, it can be very stringent, multiple level of approval for various purposes, but sometimes the strong governance makes the process very, very complex. It's a time consuming. And on the other side, if there is no governance at all, actually it creates an inconsistencies in the decision making. So there has to be a fine balance between the trust, the empowerment, and having control on the process. So how do you balance? How do you balance between this demonstrating the trust and the need of the control?
Thank you, Partha. That's a great question. You know, first of all, what is the purpose of having a procurement function? The purpose is to put in the right controls as a control function, put in the right policies and procedures. And usually, you know, when you're putting a policy for an organization which each and every employee need to adhere, you know, you usually follow a top-down approach, that this is something which is kind of approved by the board, and each and every employee of the organization need to adhere to that. So while you are drafting that policy, it is very important to kind of align most of the stakeholders that this is the process which we are going to follow, and this is how this process would help them. This would give them better suppliers. This might give better SLAs. This might give better pricing. Plus, economy of scale also play a vital role while you're setting up a procurement function and then the policies and procedures. So without the control, the purpose of having a procurement function kind of gets defeated. As you rightly mentioned, that there has to be a balance between the controls which you are putting in. Also, procurement is responsible to serve their customers, is to ensure that all the requirements which has come to the procurement function are kind of sufficed. And there are 2-3 things which we usually do. Number one, strategic procurement plays a vital role in this again. So in case 70 to 80% of your procurement, you can move to strategic procurement where you have established the contracts, rate contracts. You know, and in case there is any requirement, a purchase order can probably be released within 24 hours. It helps each and every one. Procurement function, you have put in the right controls, you got the benefit of economy of scale. Also, you are able to release these purchase orders within a TAT of probably 24 to 48 hours. So number one, strategic procurement really helps. Two, while the maximum time we spend as procurement professionals is into negotiations, and few negotiations can probably take months. E-sourcing again plays a very vital role in this to reduce that TAT. In procurement, our procurement policies, we have a very clear visibility, or we have given a very clear visibility of category-wise TATs. That if you want to procure a desktop, it would take nearly 3 to 4 days or 7 days, whatever that TAT is, depending upon the organization. It's important to kind of align your users and their expectations and in line with those TATs which are defined in the policies. Obviously, there would be certain exceptions as a procurement function. You need to support those exceptions also. But these exceptions, at least in case of Bharti Exa, are not more than 1 or 2% of the total spend. So 2, 3 points. One is setting the right expectations. Two, having strategic procurement and routing most of the spends through rate contracts where you don't need to spend too much time in negotiating and things like that. If you have established a rate contract once, you can quickly release the purchase orders. Third, defining these stats and ensuring those stats are adhered. And there is a clear visibility to each and every user that this is the TAT which is agreed for your specific function, and this is how procurement as a function we are delivering. If you are able to create that visibility for your functions, that balance between user expectation and the function gets created. As far as trust is concerned, I'm a big advocate of e-procurement, putting systems in place, putting the right policies in place. And I firmly believe, most of the procurement KPIs which we have related to savings, related to spend under management, tax, all are byproducts of having a robust, procurement policy. So if you have the right policies, I don't think so there is a question of, trust with any of the stakeholders. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. In fact, you you raised an important point is the reduction of TAT. But what happens in the reduction of TAT, it comes with an accountability as well.
Mhm.
So because every person has to meet a certain TAT, and TAT is not met, they are accountable for that. I hope the
Yeah.
policy also covers this accountability as well.
So I will also like to add a few comments here, because of course you mentioned about trust and this function. Two things. One, first of all, yes, I would say any organization, because if organization does not trust the respective employees, so irrespective of whatever process, authorizations, controls you build, you will not be able to achieve, because ultimately it's the people and process which makes the performance. So trust definitely has to be there from the organization. So accordingly, policies which has to make, that should be in the such drafted in such a manner which gives the empowerment to the team. Secondly, what I have observed most of the times when, and I would say yes, because the finance normally governance systems and controls are more attached to the finance. And then definitely across the organization, finance is normally blamed whenever the process delays and etc. So which of course I would take that candidly. But sometimes, yes, I agree, I confess it. Sometimes, many times, whenever we start developing the policies and processes, many times in a just to develop the best policies, yes, and then we hire consultants and the work of that. So sometimes, yes, organizations and all organizations, I would say, at some time we might have felt you become the prisoners of the processes. Instead of business objectives, some then it becomes like, yes, you have to follow that processes, and accordingly that becomes, instead of the intent of the process is lost and the implementation in the checklist form it is getting developed, started implemented. So that is the danger sign which I would say. And whatever processes you implement, that cannot be same or uniform across the years. I would say that there should be timeline, yes, every 6 months, respective policies should be, because down business and dynamics, accordingly policies and systems should be reviewed and changed based on the business need. Third one is trust point, because of course process whenever we implement, then definitely whichever process we will implement, it will take some time compared to if without process also. It is again, I would say mostly the general phenomena, yes, if the process is that it makes delay, but yes, it takes some time. So you have to have robust planning, particularly in case of the procurement is much more true, because many times it happens which all procurement professionals might have faced. Requirement comes all of a sudden, for which lead time is 3 to 6 months, but that a user wants that a material should be received within next 2 weeks time. With whatever efficiency you do, will not be able to satisfy that. So then you definitely require the planning at the beginning stage itself. There may be some exception cases, emergency cases, for which, yes, there should be well-defined process into the system also, where immediate decision can be taken without following the process, and those can put back to post facto approvals.
Thank you, Mr. Singhania. In fact, I would like to come to Mr. Sood also to hear your views on the same topic.
Sure.
It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
I think it's a very interesting topic, and I think I totally agree with the views of Singhania ji as well as Bharat as well, because I think there's a very clear link between trust for us as procurement professionals. There's a clear link between trust, the kind of TATs that we need to adhere to, and compliances. Right now, just to give you an example of what all we have done, because the kind of SKUs that I handle, sometimes it becomes really impossible for us to actually manage the turnaround times. For kind of slow value items. I mean, everybody knows of the 80-20 ratio and everything, wherein the number of SKUs are there, and which basically don't even constitute for 20% of the wholesale. But then, of course, that has to be addressed and that has to be procured. So, in order to address that, I think there has to be a mix of actually technology, a trust, so that we basically, and of course the compliance in place has to be put into that, so that we have a complete process in place. So just give you an example. For example, if you're buying very low item, that is something which I believe we have done. I don't know if it basically would be applied to other corporates or not, wherein we have given the authority to our various departments, our user departments, where they can actually get onto the system and directly requisition and buy low value items directly from sites like Amazon or some other sites, through a catalog management system. And that is actually linked to our SAP. Right. Now, what typically happens in this case is that for any low value item, the material can be bought directly and of course we have a DOA in place, we have an SOP in place, how this has to be done. So all that has already been put into place by everyone. But I'm talking about trust here, wherein we basically give that authority for a particular value to our respective departmental heads, where they can go ahead and buy as per, because they have their own budget defined within the system. They cannot go beyond that budget. They have their own SOPs. We have a delegation of authorities all in place. And based on that, they can basically go ahead and procure directly from these sites. And based on the material that is received, right? Then once the material is being received, it basically gets into the SAP, where automated purchase orders are being created within SAP on receipt of these materials at the gate. So what happens? It's not that these items will be ordered and they'll be directly delivered to that particular person in the plant. They will basically be received in the plant. They will be going to the store, where a proper inventory will be managed, and of course the commercial of the store guy would automatically make purchase orders. And these purchase orders, there are hundreds and hundreds of items like these which come. It is not particularly possible for a single or a couple of purchase professionals to create purchase orders for so many items. So what we have created is an automated, once the entry in a particular Excel sheet is being done and has been uploaded into SAP, automatic purchase orders are being created into SAP, so that we have a clear identification of the items that are being procured. It goes into our inventory. It basically, and of course payments are also being done with proper authorization, because the purchase orders are authorized, and hence the payments are being done respectively by the finance team. So I'm saying this basically is a clear example of how we can have a good linkage between trust, that is the departments which are there, turnaround times, because these items are small items, small value items. We just want it as of yesterday, so we don't have time to buy them. And of course, the processes and compliance also are in place. So keeping all in this mind, I just wanted to give an example to you. This is one way which we are actually managing, at least for small value items. The same can be actually be evolved and looked into for high value items also, as and when it is required. So just an example.
In fact, that's a fantastic example. We have seen organizations using the catalog management as a tool to not only reduce the turnaround time, to also releases the bandwidth of the procurement department. And It's a fantastic approach, and it's very, very useful. When you see the PRs coming in and the POs are automatically generated, maybe in SAP, maybe in any other procurement system, but it's a fantastic way of releasing your bandwidth. so that you can concentrate on the strategic buys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with reference to that, I have another question to you, Mr. Sood, that in the last 1.5 years, if you see, our working style has completely changed. Now, we used to interact face to face till 2020, beginning of 2020. But in last 1.5 years, working from anywhere, it's not home, it's from anywhere. That is what came into picture. So definitely you have faced multiple challenges in this changed working style. And so in this changed working style, I mean, how do you establish the governance framework? How do you address those challenges to make sure that your governance
It's a
functions well?
yeah. I think it's a very important question, Partha, and I think it's very relevant to today's world, wherein I believe everybody is working from home, and most of the people, I mean, at least we haven't, at least in our Delhi office, we have not joined back to our offices. I think it was very much important for us, and thankfully, I think we did all of these changes, a couple of years back before the pandemic hit us. I think what has been helpful to us is the kind of technology that we have that initiated around 2 years back, and we already have in place, wherein our complete PR to PO process is online, which includes the complete approval flow, right from creation of a PR to creating a PO to actually managing, the entire negotiations online. And as Karan was also saying, that we basically do the entire, and it's basically mandatory for us. Except for a few limited raw material items, I think we have already moved all our item procurement and services procurement online. And this, by online, I mean the entire process of not only creating the requisition, but doing the negotiations, the award scenario, uh, conducting online negotiations through online auctions, and then pushing the entire, results into the SAP for final release of purchase orders was actually being done by us a couple of years back, and that got implemented. And I think that was sort of a blessing in disguise for us, because that really helped us, and it is still helping us, because we never had any problem as far as operational governance is concerned, or controls is concerned, or even conducting a regular business as far as procurement is concerned was there. So we actually were absolutely comfortable working from home, because everybody had that access. We had the complete modules in place which were actually working. Rather, these 2 years gave us a large focus, a very good focus on how to improve these processes in place, based on what the requirements were in the current scenario. So we have now, for the last 2 years, been trying to improve these processes, bring in more flexibility, so that there is no hindrance as far as conducting business is concerned. And I think that has really helped us in this scenario to completely work from home. And we made sure, at least the procurement team has made sure that no business is hindered as far as the procurement which is order is concerned.
Yes, Mr. So, in fact, what we have seen is, though it thrown a challenge to us, this pandemic situation, but it actually helped us a lot to refine
Yes.
our strategies and our working style. In fact, the digitization, adoption of the digital platform has been more than before what used to happen probably 1.5 years.
That's right. That's right.
Working from anywhere environment. Yes, as Mr. Sood mentioned, that the digitization of the entire process has helped. There are various ways that digitization can take place. But do you think that digitization and technology are the answer to all the challenges people are facing in working from home environment? And probably what are the challenges you are facing in working from anywhere environment? Mr. Singhani. Mr. Singhani, you are probably on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So it's a very interesting question. Two things I would say, yes, all of we have 40 years plus experience and our audience. So per se, historically, I would say that all we were accustomed to walk to office on daily basis and work from office till March 20, from which, and of course, work from home used to be a luxury which was more into the IT sector, and we belong from manufacturing sector, I feel. So that forwards is something unheard. So yes, from March, after March 20, yes, the entire environment style, functioning style has changed. Number one, definitely no doubt about it. And it has improved, it has speeded up the digitization process in all organizations. And definitely I would say two things was happened. Yes, productivity wise, because once it is assumptions or an prospective employee. Earlier in the office, it was like office hours where people were working for 8 hours or maybe 9, some few hours extra based on the need. Now the flexibility remains to the employees, and then the particular respective employee has to ensure understands yes he has to complete that particular work into given the timeline. So with the flexibility of timeline, work from anywhere, I would say that the productivity has improved, no doubt about it. Number two, because of the digitization and technology usage, I would say that this meeting platforms, etc., which have come rampantly within from, I would say, within, I would say in 2020 only, this started becoming popular, of course, and then, of course, being adopted by everybody from March 20. That has come from IT perspective. Of course, we had to change some policies. Earlier, it was like that. Yes, systems were more controlled, and probably you could not restriction or access to ERP systems and the various systems were controlled, which we had given more access to every employee. So then they are facilitated to work from everything. These are the few areas where we have to work. Otherwise, I would say work from home anywhere per se. Now challenge is other way around, because now since we are moving up and in fact we are into the manufacturing setup, so with the government and with more mass vaccination for the employees and families, now as a management, yes, we have started working more into the in regular way. But now the employees keep on questioning, yes, why, whether really I'm needed to go into office physically or why I can't continue to work from home. So that is one of the management aspect which challenges I think which would be coming. Rest is of course with technology and a few changes based on the things have been smoothened.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Bhatia, again, similar question, but very, very important, because I would like to hear from all of you on the same topic. That how is the digitization of procurement helping you maintain strong governance and augment efficiency? Because we have spoken about the trust factor, the policies earlier, but now how we implement that? How, again, if there is a challenge in working from home and anywhere working style, how do you mitigate those or address those challenges using our digital platform? Is it really helping?
Yeah, I don't think so. You have a kind of option to run manual processes anymore. It's paramount. It has become a kind of necessity to have digital processes, because most of your employees would be working from anywhere. They could be even in different cities, going back to their hometowns. So it is often, it's a necessity to have digital processes supported with digital tools to manage end-to-end procurement. Not only procurement, in fact, it is important for all the functions now. As far as controls are concerned, I think Mr. Sood covered that pretty well when he talked about ERP system, how the requisitions are raised, how DOA is implemented within the ERP systems, and all the requisitions are sent to different departmental heads for their approvals. Catalog procurement is another thing I believe which is kind of catching up slowly and gradually. It gives you a feeling of very similar to when you kind of shop on Amazon or Flipkart, right? Where you have established the rate contracts, you can see these are the items which any individual, any employee can place the order. And as I said, mentioned that putting up the rate contracts and then slowly and gradually putting all these SKUs in the system also becomes important. You continue to take benefit of economy of scales for the entire organization, and it also helps you in improving the overall customer experience and their satisfaction. I believe another thing which we kind of touched but didn't talk much was on certain processes, it's very important, especially in procurement, to take care of conflict of interest uh, for most of the end-to-end procure to pay process. So it's important to ensure that the requisitions are released by respective users, approved by the departmental heads. It reaches procurement. Procurement does the negotiation through online tools. Comparative bids or proposals are sent to the management for their approvals, and against which a purchase order is released. Once the material is received, organizations now create good receipt note in the system itself, and then the invoice is raised, and then you do the three-way matching of all the invoices, and everything end to end is digital. As I said earlier, this is a necessity for each and every organization. In case these systems are missing in any medium-sized or large organization, then we are kind of inviting the risk, as well as we can be rest assured that there would be pilferages, there would be unethical practices without these tools. So they have become of paramount importance. And I believe all the medium-sized and large-sized organizations would have kind of implemented these tools in last 4 or 5 years.
Very interesting topic, the fraudulent practices. Yes, this is again, though we do not speak about this often, but this is very pertinent and very important area which every procurement department consciously or unconsciously takes to cover. I mean, there should not be any fraudulent practice, collusive or coercive or conflict of interest or anti-competitive factors. I mean, these are the things has to be covered in some form, right? So, Mr. Sood, I just, as Mr. Bhatia raised this very interesting point, I'd like to come to you on those areas. How do you address? How do you think that maybe it's a digital platform, maybe policy, maybe combination of both, or maybe something else? How do you address those areas that there should not be any fraudulent practice? We should avoid the collusive practice, suppliers joining together, maybe conflict of interest, maybe something else, or anti-competitive factors. How do you address those?
Well, it's a very broad question, Bertha, I think, and it basically can involve a lot of areas here. As far as conflict of interest is concerned, I think broad management practices should involve that there is no linkage between the employee in the organization and any business entities that are working. So I think that is something which is very important for us, and I think as an organization we ensure now that and we take an undertaking from each employee saying that there is no conflict of interest as far as an external entity is concerned and an employee is concerned. So that is something which is taken care by an HR. On the other side, as far as the internal conflict of interests are concerned, wherein I think that has to be developed in today's scenario. I think those things will have to be developed within the systems itself, within the processes itself, which are defined. Now, if you really look into it, I would certainly say that if you are basically making a purchase acquisition, for example, somebody is making a purchase acquisition, I think he will not have an authority to actually create a purchase order. So I think these are simple, basic conflict of interest scenarios, which I believe are actually imbibed whenever you develop any ERP system in an organization. These are something which is already there, and it has to be defined. I mean, this is something which is new. I think whenever you deploy or whenever you have an ERP deployed and an approval flow defined in an ERP, these kinds of things has to be managed. But how do you do that? I mean, in order to have that, we have to have in an organization clear delegation of authority mentioned, and I think this delegation of authority has to be designation wise, value wise, so that tomorrow there are no other person beyond that person is able to actually approve a particular or give an approval within the system for a particular activity that is being done within the ERP. For example, we have in the organization a well-defined DOA and an SOP in place. Now, this DOA and SOP is clearly defined in such a way wherein the user teams are defined separately, the procurement team is absolutely defined separately, and the finance team is absolutely defined, and they have different roles to play, right? So the requisition typically and the user team is absolutely responsible for controlling the budgeting, the budgets, and creating requisitions and requirements as per the budgets that are being defined. The procurement team is absolutely responsible for the procurement and the negotiation piece and creating a purchase order. And of course, the finance team is responsible for payments. And all of these things are absolutely segregated. I mean, we have no role to play. A procurement professional will have no role or influence over the finance team or invoicing or on payment side specifically, and the user team will not have any role to play as far as negotiations or procurements are concerned. So I think those things will have to be defined very clearly in the delegation of authority matrix. I think that is the first and the foremost thing. As far as collusion is concerned, the next question that you asked for, I think that is something which we all face as an organizations, we all face, especially in manufacturing organization. And I'm sure Manish, you would be able to confirm that there are many areas where we find that it's in our industry also where, for example, if you are buying raw materials or anything in that sort, it happens, wherein we basically have 2 or 3 players colliding together and determining a price, and that becomes very difficult. And I think in order to do that, what I have seen is that we'll have to create a different vendor base. We'll have to create vendors within the system to create that kind of a competition. We'll have to have a very, very transparent negotiation process, which typically would mean that we basically do all our negotiations and our interactions with the vendors only online so that they don't get any other impression. The discussions have to be done only by the procurement team as such and not by the user teams, because if they start doing that, especially on the negotiation side, then the vendors start getting different impressions, and it helps them to basically try and understand what is the strategy of the organization as such. So I think in order to do that, these kinds of things will have to be done. And most important in this is how you basically have a complete vendor management system in place. Vendor management is typically not only sourcing new vendors, but I think it also talks about how you basically maintain the relationship with vendors. There could be areas where we have single vendor scenarios where you'll have to have strategic licensing and strategic tie-ups. But there will be other areas, for example, logistics or other places where you could easily have collisions, and you will have to introduce new players in the market. You'll have to have confidence in them in order to break that nexus in order to get the better prices in the market. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things put together. It is not just one thing, but I think it needs to basically have the management needs to have a proper control, have a proper understanding of the market also. For example, if I'm talking about logistics or I'm talking of raw material purchases, you need to have a complete understanding of the market as to where we stand, what is the kind of a quantity that we want to buy, what are the various vendors who are there, who are basically trying to supply to us, who are the interested parties, who are the parties who are trying to collude, and then develop a strategy together, in order to attack that and address this situation.
Perfect. In fact, yes, I agree. There are multiple combinations. In fact, I would love to continue this discussion for quite long basis. It's a very, very interesting topic, specifically how to address those problem statements. But I can see there are a few questions in the chat box. So I'd like to take this question first. So first question is for Mr. Singhania. So the question is, as ArcelorMittal has taken over Essar Steel, the new initiatives which the new management has taken to digitize end-to-end procurement process and the benefits which organization is looking for.
Thank you for the question. Of course, I would say that almost 2 years back, Essar Steel has been taken over by joint venture of ArcelorMittal and Nippon Steel. That's why the name of ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel. And since both are one of the largest steel maker multinational companies, so both owners and promoters have brought in the best practices into the procurement to the offer into the company. And digitization per se, the process was already on into the company. After takeover and because of this COVID situation pandemic, this digitization process have been significantly fastened, and lot of processes improvements have come up. Idea is that in fact presently we are talking about the putting the robotics process into end-to-end procurement function. In fact, we have into PP2P part, into AP or payment function, invoice booking function, accounts function. We have already automated the process by using robotics technology, which we are planning to implement into backward into the procurement function also. I think Mr. Partha, we are not able to hear you.
Okay, sorry, I was on mute. So that another question, it is on the catalog, probably it is for Mr. Sood, as you mentioned the catalog. So would love to know more about the catalog purchase linked with SAP Item Master. Please enlighten if it is being followed by any organization. Also, which kind of O&M spares or consumables can be covered under it. Please share the criteria.
So I think a very important question, and I think it's very interesting to know. I think this is something which I believe, as far as my knowledge goes, I think not many organizations have really moved into catalog management area per se as of now in India. In of course in other countries, as far as my knowledge goes, yes, catalog management is a very common way of procurement, because even for I'm not even talking about C class items. I'm talking of A and B class items today. In other countries, we have catalog buying systems. In India, at least as of I know, it's very difficult for me to actually identify anybody who's really doing catalog management per se. But yes, what I can say is, as I was giving an example earlier, that low value items can either be outsourced or they can be bought in a way where we can buy them from companies, the Amazons of the world, wherein direct buying can be, your Amazon system can actually directly be linked to your ERP, wherein purchasing can be done, and we can basically manage low value procurement through that particular system. Catalog management, of course, therein what you can do is typically have an outsourced company or an agency which can basically make catalogs for the C class items for you. And this kind of a catalog buying can definitely be done through an outsourced company, which can actually get integrated with your with a recipe or ERP, and then the user teams can directly go into the catalog and click on that and directly buy. So that kind of a system will have to be created. We are on the way, as I told you. We are one of those companies who are actually getting into that kind of a mechanism. We just started that a couple of years back. What I told you earlier was something which we have started. But I think it's for us as an organization, or maybe in India, I think it's a long way to go, unless and until maybe Karan and Singaji would have some other views. But I believe in India, I think we still are a long way to go as far as complete catalog buying is concerned. And at least, and I think as far as I'm concerned, C class buying, C class items and B class items can definitely move on to catalog buying. In case, and there are various ERPs. I mean, if you look at Ariba or if you look at other, M Junction, platforms, I think they can provide a catalog buying, what do you call, processes and management. And it's going to
add to what Mr. Sood said, catalog items. So, C class items, definitely low value items, you can easily think of kind of putting them in the catalog. But even a little, items like, for example, laptops or desktops can also be added to that catalog. So whichever items which are more of a commodity and you can establish kind of rate contract for those items, stationery, laptops, IT consumables, other consumables which you need on day-to-day basis. All these items can be easily added to catalog. It gives a better experience to the users. Many BFSI companies, by the way, are moving towards e-procurement, towards catalog procurement. And the reason is pretty simple. One, it reduces the bandwidth for procurement as a function. Two, Mr. Sood earlier also talked about automatic purchase orders. So instead of creating automatic purchase orders once the items are delivered, you are kind of creating these purchase orders well in advance through these catalog procurement. Last but not the least is it gives you a benefit of negotiating better with the service providers. When you tell them that during next 12 months, I would be able to procure, for example, 500 laptops, vis-a-vis when you're doing that ad hoc procurement for one laptop one by one. So from that perspective, it gives you a better user experience and also give you a significant amount of savings through economy of scale.
In fact, that's a very interesting point on the catalog. We've spoken about the catalog a lot, but you see, not only the catalog, there are many other areas where a digital platform can bring down the TAT drastically. Obviously, because when we implemented our procurement system that is called MJ Pro, we have seen that the catalog plays a vital role. Automation in different steps plays a very vital role. It reduces time by 20% to 50%, the time of the procurement professionals. So, I mean, one area is already mentioned by Mr. Sood, creating a purchase order automatically. This is one area. But why only creating? Why not in the other steps, the automation in other steps? That means when the quotation is over, why the entire quotation is open automatically and the purchaser gets the notification that these are the quotation I have received with a comparative statement automatically generated. It saves time. I mean, those are the many activities which even if you have as a digital platform, you have to go log in, click. That those things can be avoided to reduce the turnaround time. Those are the aspects definitely the scope of improvement in any digital platform. But there's another question on the robotics technology. Robotics technology is very effective during present day scenario, but surely it is going to have adverse impact on the employment, particularly to laborers. How we propose to address this issue? Mr. Singhania?
Mr. Chakravarti, it's a very relevant question. I would take back maybe 3 decades back, 1984, when Mr. Rajiv Gandhi became our Prime Minister. And then computers were launched and started using into government offices and to businesses and governments. And that time everybody was talking, yes, once computers are there, so then it is going to kill the entire employment because it's a different way of life. So similarly, the case of the robotics also, yes, per se, I would say the advantage of robotics technology is that it is 24/7, untired, transactions, routine transactions, which does not require much skill set. Definitely this can be done by the robotics very efficiently. So going by the future, these type of transactions, if your skill set, the employee's respective skill set is of was very routine nature, so those type of transactions or those type of employment definitely will be killed. But there would be plenty of different opportunities which will come with the robotics technology, adoption of technologies, whereby reskilling of the employees, those employees can be reskilled, re-employed into different type of things. So I would
Mr. Singhania, we have lost you. Mr. Sood, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. We've lost Mr. Singhania.
I think Mr. Singhania was making a valid point here, wherein he was talking about reskilling of the resources. I think robotics or maybe computerization or maybe the automation of the procurement process. I think he's back. Sorry.
Yes, back. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Singhania, you are in mute. You are still in mute. Mr. Singhania, you are still in mute. We can't hear you. Okay, I think there is a problem. So we don't have time, only 1 minute. There was another question. I thought I would pass it to Mr. Bhatia, but sorry, Mr. Bhatia, I do not have time. We have to wrap up. We have only 1 minute to go. So it seems that 1 hour is not sufficient for such insightful discussion. But we have to bring this discussion to an end. We would love to hear more from Mr. Singhania, Mr. Sood, Mr. Bhatia in coming days. Hope to meet you again. With this expectation, I would like to conclude this discussion, and I'd like to thank all the participants who has spent their valuable time with us, and also our MD who has supported us, Ashish Goel and his team who has conducted this webinar. A lot of effort goes into this behind the screen. So thank you very much to all, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Partha. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. Thank you, Mr. Singhani. Thank you. Bye-bye.